You're watching Rogers TV.
Hello everybody, my name is Jason Piercey and this is Out of the Fog. Tonight, I'm gonna give you a whole night to talk with Mayor Dave Aker, the mayor of the city of Mount Pearl. They just released a budget. He's spending millions and millions of dollars on a whole bunch of stuff. Where does that money come from? Are they raising taxes? And what about all this crime you're seeing on the news in Mount Pearl? We're gonna get to all of that when we come back right after this. Welcome back to Out of the Fog. Let me introduce to you my favorite Mount Pearl mayor, Mayor Dave Aker. How are you, sir?
Jason, good to see you. I'm great, thanks.
It is good to see you. One of the things that stands out to me is one time, I can't remember where we were. It was probably at Landwash, actually. And I ran into you, and you had a Tim's cup. And on your Tim's cup, it said Mayor Dave.
It did.
And I was like, you don't make them call you Mayor Dave, do
No, I
you?
don't make them, but that's generally a reference that former Deputy Mayor Locke and Councillor Locke put on me when I first became mayor, and that was, 7 years ago. I enjoy it, but I'm an informal type.
Agreed.
And I appreciate the informality here with Rogers here today.
Yeah. So, well, to go straight from all that informality, just straight into a bunch of formality, let's talk about what's the latest in the city of Mount Pearl, other than how beautifully lit up St. David's Park is in the evening. It's really nice.
It's beautiful. The weather's been great since we lit up the park. And for a little bit of everybody's information, our Youth of the Year, the Male Youth of the Year, is named after a nice guy named John Rossiter, who passed away during Hurricane Juan in Halifax. But the Rossiter family have donated all those lights.
No way.
To light up that park in memory of John, right? So it's got a little personal touch there as well. And everybody gets to enjoy it. And this year, if you want to head up to Powers Pond, we have the trailway around the pond decorated for Christmas as well.
I heard that because I'm a Mount Pearl resident now, and we go to the dog park there frequently, and we walk through those trails because we back right onto the river, and I got close access. And it was awesome up there all through Halloween, and I heard that it's all lit up for Christmas, so we will definitely be going up there soon. But this is...
And Saturdays and Wednesdays in the evening, we'll have carolers up there as well, between now and New Year's.
See, I didn't get the notice for auditioning.
You didn't?
No, I didn't.
No.
It's probably best. Yeah. I'm a horrendous singer.
I do believe the Salvation Army have a lock on the band. And we've got various community groups helping out with the caroling. But I think it's from around 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. If you show up on time, you may find a carol sheet, so don't count yourself out that quickly.
I think I should, and everybody would want me to. City of Mount Pearl just released a budget.
Councillor Lane tabled a $58.6 million budget for 2025.
That's a lot of money.
And there's always a lot of machinations going on in your daily life as a member of council. You're always thinking ahead to next year. You're always dealing with current issues. You're always reflecting on the past. But I can say to you that budget reflects the hard work of our council. We established 3 years ago a 4-year strategic plan. And that's the guiding light. And in a way, Jason, it keeps us all on the same page. It's a unifying document. The budget, basically, we looked after core services. So
by core services, you're talking about like snow clearing, garbage collection, recycling, those sort of things? Yeah, okay.
The stuff that sometimes gets the headlines, but largely the stuff like a garbage truck. We've got 3 garbage trucks in the budget. They have to be replaced. The prices are now astronomical. But the bad news would be for the city if we couldn't pick up our garbage, right? So you've got to do those things too. And we've got other investments that we're making throughout the city, but largely about safety and community events.
Safety. I'd like to talk about that one, but because there's a lot of stuff going on, and I feel like there's some sensationalism, don't get me wrong. I'm a resident of Mount Pearl, and I know that there's some reality to it too. But there's also some dramatics. And not to downplay the reality of stuff, but I want to get to that one later.
Okay.
I got a question for you. Mm-hmm. How much is a new garbage truck?
You're talking about $675,000.
Okay.
So we
and
invested $2
3
million in the budget for 2025. So there's 2 of them at that price, and another one that's a bit cheaper called a rear loader, which aids more in our recycling efforts in the city. But yeah,
so that's
2
a
new
couple of
garbage
$1 million
trucks.
bucks.
Yeah, and they're a good 18 months away. You can put the money in the budget right now, make the order, and it takes a long time to get them here on site.
So when you did your strategic plan 3 years ago for the next 4 years, did you have $2 million in that strategic plan for garbage trucks?
No, but the strategic plan guides us in terms of coming up with the budget. So
okay, it's not.
We would think about investments in fleet, and then we leave it up to largely the Public Works Department to determine what they need. But we've invested a lot in the last few years in utility trucks and loaders, and now we have to get to garbage collection, a core service we need to support.
So, because I'm not sure if, well, I think the public generally understands that if we're lacking something in any kind of governmental section, whether it's municipal, provincial, federal, if we're lacking something and the government can grow what we are lacking by spending money on it, then that's a thing that if it's a good thing to do, we should do. But there is only so much money, and it has to come from somewhere. So sometimes people might say, well, they're cutting this from education or they're cutting that from healthcare because the money has to come from somewhere to spend $2 million on garbage trucks.
And cities and towns are never perfect. There's always a long list that come to council from staff that you have to whittle down at the end of the day. But I think the starting point this year was we were not prepared to be changing our mill rates and the like. We've looked at some of the fees we charge for service fees for residents to use our facilities. They're competitive in the region. We give good value, for example, with day camps and Easter camps and swimming lessons, that kind of stuff. And there's always a debate about how much do you let services that are not your core services, your community services, leak into the taxpayer's budget? How much should the hockey players pay or the skaters pay an hour, for example, to use the glacier? Versus how much should the taxpayer subsidize that? So that's always the debate.
Well,
but the starting point is service delivery. We have to articulate the types of services we want to provide. And what level of service we're committed to. And I think the city does a really good job delivering its services. But council's starting point this year was no change in the mill rate.
So for anybody who's watching, you're curious, a mill rate is it's how your property taxes are determined. So you have the assessed value of your property, you apply a mill rate to it, do that math, and whatever number gets spit out, that's how much your property taxes are.
Right.
So increasing the mill rate would be a way to get yourself some more cash to buy some garbage trucks or whatever else.
Yeah.
And the rule was, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah, and municipalities are not allowed by law to run deficits. Like we can borrow money for capital items. And probably the biggest item that we have in our budgets for the next 2 years will be the new community center.
Yes,
we're replacing Park Place there off Park Avenue. Formerly the Legion, it was built in the early 50s. It's seen its day from an accessibility point of view. It's not as usable as it used to be. We've had leaks in the roof. We've got foundation issues. So we determined through a public engagement process that was a priority under our recreation master plan. So the new facility, the foundation is in. The steel has been ordered. It'll start going up the winter. Our goal is to get it as much closed in by the time the Canada Games appear in the region next August. And Mount Pearl will be hosting baseball down at that site, which is the Team Gusher site in Mount Pearl.
Yeah, so you mentioned community engagement.
Yeah.
To what degree does community engagement kind of guide or at least provide a permission slip to move one way or another in these kind of decisions? Like, democracy, of course, is, by definition, is community engagement. We said vote Dave, so Dave is in. But when you're talking about decisions like this, and you're talking about Park Place and a new community center, Do these decisions get made regardless, or is it just fortuitous that the community said, hey, we like this? I know it's a hard question, but...
Well, we polled the community and we got a lot of feedback, but that was one of the major items we got the feedback on. But the purpose of the engagement is not always to find out, are you satisfying every need in the community? It's largely about sometimes, like you mentioned earlier on, budgets are limited, you can't run deficits is what I responded. It's about determining your priorities. But when you have an asset that old, it's pretty obvious if it needs to be replaced, it has to go. And the community is supportive of that through their feedback saying, we want a new community center, which will be a lot larger, more modern. It's not going to be a sports or recreation facility. It'll seat anywhere from 300 to 500 depending on the layout. It'll have theater-style seating, and we hope to put more artistic events there like the Frosty Festival,
Sure.
City Days. It becomes an indoor venue for entertainment as well as a place for our service groups to utilize, like the Lions Club and the Kinsman Club, for scouts, guides, cadets.
It's a community center.
It's a community center, whereas the REIT Center will pivot out of supporting some of these groups, like the Mount Pearl Seniors Independence Group, and it will become largely an athletic or sports-related facility. So on a Saturday night, you won't necessarily see any of those minor hockey dances like you've seen in the past. That'll be down to the new place. You might see a pickup game of basketball. We might see some of the youth in the city playing floor hockey.
Yeah.
Or it could be people like you and I, Jason, taking each other on a game of broomball.
Broomball.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'll give it a shot.
We could be captains.
We could be.
Go Leafs.
It's possible.
Go
Go
Habs.
Leafs. No, yeah. No, we're not going to get into that. It's not fair as a Leafs fan for me to give a Montreal Canadiens fan a hard time on television when it's so obviously a difficult season for you. I'm sympathetic to
But
that.
the legacy is what counts.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we'll say about you when you're voted out next. It's the legacy that counts.
Yeah.
So, any other particular highlight of the budget that, as mayor, you think it's important to note? And this doesn't have to be something that you're like, this is something people will love. It'll get me more votes. Was there a hard part? What's the worst part of the budget?
Actually, it was a very easy budget, but we did a lot. We laid out a lot of plans during the year. So we're investing in an area off Kenmount Road, which you could say is the last remaining raw lands in Mount Pearl, to bring water and related infrastructure into that area so that we can develop new houses. And we've partnered with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation under what the federal government calls its Housing Accelerator Fund. Our goal is to create 386 new units over 3 years. And so far we've issued development permits under that fund for 215 new housing units here in the city. As we talked earlier, interest rates are going down. Likely that'll end up with a increase in housing prices and affect affordability unless we provide new inventory, so to speak, in the real estate market. And I know our neighboring cities, St. John's plus Paradise and CBS, they're working on the same thing as well. We have to do it a little bit different because we just can't say we're going to build more subdivisions on the periphery of the city. We've actually...
Well, you're restricted. You don't have the... You don't have the luxury, which is in some ways also a good thing for like urban planning. You don't have the luxury of sprawl.
No. So Mount Pearl and St. John's have grown together, and so has Mount Pearl and Paradise. Many of the schools now have children going from each community. But we live in a really, really good region, but Mount Pearl has to do it the Mount Pearl way at the end of the day. So we're going to continue to focus on good housing stock and great services for our families. Sometimes, Jason, it's not a matter of just focusing on the quantity in your budget. It's focusing on the quality of the services and the amenities that you supply, right? Mount Pearl's still a great place to live. It's very family-oriented. We have a lot more seniors than we had in the past. That's the biggest demographic shift.
Time will do that to us.
Yeah, it will, right? Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
When we come back, let's talk some more about the wonderful parts of Mount Pearl. And I'm going to ask you some tough questions about things people are saying are not as wonderful as they once would have been perceived. Maybe some crime stuff. We'll be right back after this. again, welcome back to Out of the Fog. Mayor Dave, you mentioned Mount Pearl wanting to build another 380-something housing units over the course of the next year, did you say?
I did, yeah.
It's a lot in a year.
So 386 is over 3 years, and that's internal to the existing parts of Mount Pearl. That's redevelopment, if you will.
Sure.
Taking existing properties and or existing lands within the heart of the city and seeing more housing, more intensification occur throughout the city. So what's leading us towards this end is our new municipal plan, which has already been crafted. We're about to send it off to municipal affairs, which will see a change in our zoning in the city to allow for more redevelopment. But then we've got
so
the
like
lands.
what pockets of land do you have that you can redevelop, that you're looking to change zoning of? And
Yeah, so we got the old Park Avenue school site.
Yeah.
We've got Stapleton Road, the old pool site down there. So we got pool and school being redeveloped. And there's pockets throughout the city that we're seeing more intense development occur, more backlot development and the like. So yeah, we're at about 215. You're going to see some affordable housing projects as part of that, likely on Moores Drive, and that might be a seniors-driven project.
Okay, can you define affordable housing project? Is that like under Canada Mortgage and Housing's, like, because they have different programs that are available if you keep like rental rates or something under a certain percentage
So it's
of
not
market?
social housing, which basically targets people's income.
Yes.
Typically likes to bring the rent down to 25%. Affordable housing is something that typically is at lower end of market, so it's a bit of a judgment call, but it tends to be rental housing. And in the city of Mount Pearl, our target, working with developers and nonprofit groups, is more along the lines of seniors and helping them out, right? There's a lot of...
These will be privately owned?
Or owned by a nonprofit.
Or a
yes.
nonprofit,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. But in addition to all that, we're building a new subdivision with a bunch of landowners there in the Camount Road, Wyatt Boulevard area of Mount Pearl, and you could see as many as, at the end of the day, 6,000 people up there. That's our plan. Well over 1,000 houses, commercial development along Camount Road. We're gearing up, ready to go. We've already been redeveloping the pipe system that's up in there, so we can basically get more water up there. We can get more sewer, and we've got plans now to put out to market the construction of a new water tank, which ultimately will feed the water there. And we're also working with Paradise and St. John's, as well as transportation infrastructure under Minister Hutton, about providing together the infrastructure that's needed for the new hospital, which should be going across the way there on Camount Road, right?
Yeah. Which everybody was up in arms about and then forgot real quick when they talked about all of the money coming down out of Labrador and Quebec. It's almost like politicians know if we give them the thing they won't like as much, and then we wait a little bit and then give them stuff we know they're going to love, they might forget about the other thing. It's a remarkable coincidence.
But it's a great project.
It is.
If you think about it, the Health Sciences Center was built in the 70s. St. Clair's is as old as dirt, as they say. But that pocket of land you see in Paradise, Mount Pearl, and St. John's on Camount Road, it's largely forested. We've got our piece, Paradise, St. John's as well.
And they all border and intersect.
It looks like, on a map, it looks like it's in the middle of a donut. It's kind of a great location. But ultimately, it'll be important to hook up the hospital site to Trans-Canada Highway. Because it's not just serving Mount Pearl or St. John's or Paradise. It's serving the entire Avalon, if not eastern Newfoundland and Labrador.
Exactly, I'm supportive of it. I was just mostly making a joke because I wanted to lighten the mood before we started talking about all of the terrible, horrible crime that's going on in your city and how you're going to fix it, because it's mostly just entirely your fault specifically.
Well, we're going to fix it by working together, but I think the issue here was the veracity of the crime and its repetitious nature.
I think so.
And yes, there's youth involved, so we can't go talking too much in terms of detail. They're protected, so to speak.
But that context matters, though. It matters that it's youth involved. That matters because under legislation for people under a certain age, we have to operate under the law, right?
Agreed.
And police have to operate under the law.
Yes.
And when somebody is of a certain age and an infraction, an infringement, or a crime is categorized by what it actually was, it's very clear cut what you are allowed to do about that act, that person, and those things. And like it really makes things look worse than they are sometimes.
It also makes things look like we're all washing our hands of it, that we can't do anything about it. But clearly, there's a role for everybody. So as a municipality, we thought it was important to talk about the issue with our residents. We had 200 people come out for a great session, and it was an open mic style. But we talked about the role of our municipal enforcement versus the RNC.
When you say session, do you mean another one of those like public engagement sort of things that we talked about?
Yeah,
so you hosted a thing, say, come, here's a mic, tell us what you think about like public safety, crime.
As it relates to the incidents that occurred in Mount Pearl.
Gotcha.
We were not really trying to restrict the conversation, but we didn't want to get into potholes and transportation. We were trying to make sure we were focused enough. We had the RNC there, which was good, many provincial representatives, and I think it's really important that we all, we don't hear it anecdotally. We hear people come up and talk about their stories. One of the wives of one of the men that was hurt in the whole incident, she spoke of the impact on her family, and her husband. It was heartwarming. It would break your heart to listen to her speak. And other residents came up, I think for about an hour and a half. They talked about the change in crime. But I think it's important not to go away thinking we can't do anything about it. So the schools have a role, community, CSSD, the government department, justice, the RNC, and we've got a great working relationship with the RNC. And I know, to your point, they have their hands tied in terms of what they can communicate. But if the same types of behaviors are repeating themselves over and over again, it's clear to me that we have to expect that we'll do something different in order to tackle the problem.
Well, I mean, you would have to, because if you don't, like that type of behavior in a younger person, they're testing limits and boundaries. And if they don't meet an upper or lower threshold of what will be tolerated, then they'll push further. And that's just a general psychological principle about development. We push further, we try more.
I've seen it in our own children, right?
In mine, in me. I do it in conversations with you on camera. So but it's a thing that we do. So there does, without repercussion, without consequence, we tend not to learn lessons.
And children spend a lot of time away from the house. You know, they're in school, they're in the community. We offer some tremendous programs for youth. Nobody will ever be turned away from doing skating lessons or playing hockey because of their income. So we offer all that. But in this case here, this is more of it's not a programming issue, it's a people behavior issue. And we have to work with Department of Justice, the RNC, the school board. I can't say that enough, that we all have to get together. The city's role is to be the eyes and ears in the community and to make sure the RNC are aware of and incidents are reported by our businesses and our residents when they occur. They'll often say, the RNC that is that without the facts, they cannot manage police operations within the city. But having said that, I think Mount Pearl is still a fairly good place to live. It's right now.
I would agree. Right. I mean, I'm there.
We want our residents expect from council, they expect leadership. So when there is a problem that crops up, and I'm not going to downplay the extent of the problem, the veracity was over the top, and the repetitious nature is what frustrates everybody the most.
Statistically speaking, I'm assuming that part of the job of government is to have an accurate representation of what's going on, because otherwise, if you don't know what's going on, how can you properly...
Based on facts.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yep.
Are there safety concerns? Now, I'm not going to say, like, can you walk down a trail and, like, you know, not get attacked? But, like, are there things, is it less safe than maybe it would have been perceived to be at once?
I think the key word there is perception. There is a perception that there's not a presence on behalf of the authorities, whether it's the RNC or perhaps us. People don't feel comfortable. People are giving me feedback that they've changed their habits. So they're not doing what they normally do.
Because they're concerned if they would do what they normally did.
So the way, I guess, to re-inject that security or that secure atmosphere in their lives, I think is more presence on behalf of organizations like the RNC, a more active role by the school system. And, you know, parents and families have a role too. I'm not here to blame anybody.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because, I mean, we're going to run out of time, but I was going to do the same thing. Like, if my child had been witnessed intimidating, bullying, hurting, otherwise being mischievous or criminal-esque, and the people who witnessed it said, well, you got to call, you know, you got to call the municipal enforcement or the RNC, the RCMP, and you got to talk to the school, and you got to talk to her. Like, who called Dad? Like, there's a parenting part here.
The broader question is, who are the influencers in the lives of children today? Is it the teacher? Is it the parents? Is it the smartphone? Is it what they see on X? It's a whole series of questions that lead you to wonder. And understand, I think in some families how parents do tend to lose control, but you need to understand who they're hanging around with, and you need to understand what they're doing.
I hate to cut this off, because not only do I like the conversation, I just like talking to you, Mayor Dave. Thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate your time. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back after this.
Your opinion matters, and we want to hear from you. Get in touch with us using our viewer feedback line, your direct connection to shaping the shows you love. It's easy. Just grab your phone, scan the QR code on your screen, and take our quick survey. Share your thoughts, and let's make your viewing experience even better.
And welcome back. I have always liked Mayor Dave, and I've always liked Mount Pearl, and I do live there now. And as I'm talking to him about some of these things, they start to make a lot of sense to me. There's stuff that I still want to think my way through, but when it comes to the crime stuff, how about we go ahead and get Constable James Cadigan? He's the media relation guy for the RNC. Maybe sometime in the next little bit, we'll get him to come in. We'll talk about what the RNC thinks about that and everything else. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
We want to hear from you. Provide feedback on this show or find out how you can get involved. Call, email us, or scan the QR code to take our quick survey.
For me, it all started here.
I do my best work here.
Scores! Oh my goodness! This guy's dangerous from here, here, and here.
We're watching history in the making here.
Are you watching this?
And our fans are up here. I'm here for it. It's all about what's up here and what's in here.
Sportsnet, here for hockey.
We invite you to play What's My Line?
Welcome, Mrs. Baker. Those folks over there need to guess your extraordinary occupation.
Are you an entertainer, Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Do people come to watch you, perform?
Yes. Do you travel for work? Yes, I do.
Do you ever wear a special type of costume?
Yes.
Is your job, physical?
Yes, indeed.
Are you a member of a team?
Yes.
Are you a professional baseball player?
Yes, I am.
Created during the Second World War, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League included 68 Canadians. One of its brightest stars was my mother, Saskatchewan's Mary Bonnie Baker, a pioneer for women in sports.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning.